love. It's an important subject. Most people would agree that love matters most. The difficulty is we don't always define love in the same or correct way. Why can't the world teach us to love? Romans 1 goes on. They are filled with every kind of sin, evil, greed, and hatred. They are full of jealousy, murder, fighting, lying, and thinking the worst things about each other. They gossip and say evil things about each other. They hate God. They are rude, proud, and brag about themselves. They invent ways of doing evil, and they don't obey their parents. They are foolish, they don't keep their promises, and they show no kindness or mercy to others. 8 habits of an unloving world. Why can't the world teach us love? One thing he points out here is hatred. Now, we all agree that none of us hate anyone, right? No one goes around and says, I hate people. No one wants to say they hate, but we have to understand the definition of hate is an intense dislike. Think of it this way. You never stop disliking the person. Now, does that sound familiar? Because if you're like me, you've had people in your life where you never stop disliking them. Hatred. When we are hurt, we isolate the hate. No one hates when they're in constant contact with an individual. We have to isolate from people to hate. It is really difficult to hate when you're around people. You're not going to hate and beat up Asian people if you spend time with Asian people. You're only going to hate them when you isolate. Notice social media. People isolate into their groups so they can hate other people. Part of hate is you need to isolate. And why do we isolate from hate? Because we feel like someone has hurt us. Hey, quick news flash. Just because we feel hurt doesn't mean we've been hurt. A lot of us have this thing that's, I've been hurt, and therefore I've been hurt. Well, if your teacher gives you, or your professor gives you a D on the test, and you feel hurt, that doesn't mean the professor has hurt you. That means you've hurt yourself because you didn't study and you got a D. We live in a society now which says I need to take zero responsibility for my life. I can just find other people to take responsibility for how I feel. And that's how you get to hatred, full of jealousy. When we self-hate, and there's some great articles on the web, you can go read them, you don't have to even trust me. Go read articles that talk about jealousy, and especially teen or college-age jealousy and mental health, and you'll find that a lot of time that jealousy comes when you have self-hate. We isolate and compare. And I want us to understand, we just lived through a pandemic, and what have we been doing a lot? Lockdowns, right? Isolating. And the more we isolate, the easier it is to compare and say, well, why does that person get to have this? Why does that person have all the friends? Why does that guy have all the girls liking them? Any guys ever been there? I used to live there. I used to live in that house. Why is that guy? Everybody likes that guy. Why are all the girls looking at that? Why don't they talk about me? Well, they did talk about me, but it wasn't in a liking way. But anyway, fighting. We get angry, and what do we do when we get angry? We isolate, and we fight anybody who tries to come in and get us to stop being angry. Have you ever noticed when you're angry, it's very rare to walk out in the neighborhood and say, everybody, I'm angry. We don't do that. We go in the house, and then we get angry in the house and maybe with the people we live with. But we don't let anybody know, because isolation, you got to get away from people. And many times to be really angry, we've got to get alone with ourselves so we can validate ourselves. Have you ever approved of your own thoughts? And then if someone else came in and disagreed, you got angry with them? What are you doing telling me that? No, this is what's really true. And a lot of people say, well, no, those are people with mental health problems. We all have that mental health problem. We all self-validate, and a lot of it comes down to fighting. These are the words that were used in that passage. Lying. When we fear vulnerability, we lie. when we fear that someone will know our weaknesses, someone will know our fears, someone will know our insecurities, oftentimes we isolate from people that we think may get to know us because we're afraid of being vulnerable. Man, that was my gargantuan, Hulk-sized fear, my greatest fear. And when I first started studying the Bible, I was afraid because they were asking me questions about my life. And I was like, no, I'm not giving you that information. What will you do with that information? I've watched a couple of CIA movies. And you ever share your heart with somebody and then you walk away and you go, what was I thinking? And so we end up lying about what's really going on because we fear vulnerability, thinking the worst of others. When we are rejected or we fear rejection, what we often do, I'm talking about me too, what we often do is we start thinking bad things about other people. Have you ever done that? Have you ever really gotten there where you just get into it? I mean, it's like throwing logs on a fire. You got that house heating up because you're thinking terrible things about people. And then we go and we see them and we go, oh man, I haven't seen you for so long. These are things that we do when we're being unloving. Evil gossip, where we say evil things about other people to other people. Been doing that? You know, a lot of us think, well, I did it because it doesn't matter what reason we did it for, it's unloving. And I know some of us who've grown up in church, little good church children, you feel like you've never done anything wrong, the whole world's treated you wrong. This is one that church children really do a lot. Think the worst of other people and then tell other people all those worst things. Gossip destroys people. Proverbs talks about the fact that a gossip will separate friends. I thought that was just being upset. No, that's being unloving. And you know what? Once you start getting really like living that way, you hate God. A lot of times we isolate and we're lonely, and then we blame God for the fact that we're lonely. Have you ever sat down and blamed God for your situation, even though you did it? There's a scripture, and I get it in Proverbs again, that says that an evil man ruins his own life and then rages against God. One of the favorite things in America is like nobody prays to God half the time, don't give God any honor, but as soon as there's a storm or a national disaster, they go, why did God do that? Well, I thought you didn't believe in God. They believe in God only when it's time to blame God for something. Do you hate God because of your life? Are you sure God did that? And finally, we become proud. I've experienced this myself. The pain of isolation makes us harden. Pain is tough. We've all felt it. Suffering, I've suffered. For a lot of my young years, when I was your age, I didn't really suffer. I had a really easy life. Then you become an adult, you get responsibility, and you start to understand what it is to suffer. But some of you who are younger, you suffered from day one. You've suffered in tough life. Whether it's the neighborhood you grew up in, it's the home you grew up in, it's the opportunities that you didn't get that other people got. It's people taking advantage of you. And when you get hit with enough pain, we have a choice. We can either talk about that pain or we can harden and act like we don't have that pain. And when we're unloving, one of the reasons we are unloving is we harden and we say, I don't want to feel anything anymore. Look, I think we don't need to look at that list and be negative about it. We need to look at that list and see opportunity in it. Instead of doing all these things, there's some simple things we can do to be able to overcome these. And the first one I'm going to ask you or encourage you to do is this. What I had to learn to do. Talk. Talk to God and talk to people. Storing up things inside will always make us unloving. But believe it or not, you verbalizing how you feel is the beginning of loosening up the hardening, and it'll get you to a spot where you can be loving. But these are the reasons why we cannot look to the world for how to love. Now, I was telling you about a song earlier. It came from the 1980s. which maybe you studied in history class, but I lived during that time. And it's Johnny Lee, and he has this song called Looking for Love in All the Wrong Places. It goes like this: I was looking for love in all the wrong places, looking for love in too many faces, searching their eyes, looking for traces of what I'm dreaming of. When I was a kid, I don't know about you, I used to dream of having a girlfriend, and, it was like nirvana. Like if I could reach that point, it would be like getting a 4.0. If I could reach that point, it'd be like hitting the light. And that's because the world told me that would solve my problems. But what I found was I began to look everywhere except God for how to be loving and how to feel loved. The most important thing in my life and your life is to feel loved. But in order to feel loved, we have to let people love us and not end up looking for love in all the wrong places.